Okay, let's go. All right. Working from a trauma-informed perspective. Okay. Let's see. What is a trauma-informed perspective? A trauma-informed perspective is working from a trauma-informed perspective, means interacting with peers based on an understanding of emotional distress as often being a result of trauma and adapting trauma-informed practices. Everybody that we come in contact with has had some sort of trauma. Okay? When you go in to speak to people, we must always have that in our minds. They've experienced some kind of trauma. Something. Whether they share it with you or not, we have to have that perspective. Okay? Why do it? When we work from a trauma-informed perspective, we are better equipped to offer supports for recovery and resiliency. We're better. We're better be able to help them. Okay? All right. How do you think trauma affects people? Especially people with behavioral health issues. I'm talking about, are people born with trauma? You say no? Okay. Why you say yes?
Because I've heard of trauma from coming out of the
You say yes? Ellie? What do you think? Okay. How about this? Doctors have said, you're right. Doctors have said, the most traumatic experience is you coming through the birth canal. The most, as a child, whether they spank you or not, you coming from a warm, comfortable place into a cold, air-conditioned, like you're naked, you're butt naked, and you're cold. And you just came from a warm, pillowly place. All right? That's good. Okay, thank you. So you come from a warm, pillowly place, so that's your first traumatic experience. Birth. It's a physical trauma. It's a physical trauma, okay? It's physical trauma. Trauma, understanding it. Individual trauma results from an event or series of events or circumstances that are experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, and that has long-lasting effects, okay, on the individual's functioning, mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. Those are the 3 E's of trauma: event, experience, and effect. 3 E's of trauma. The 3 E's. Remember those 3 E's, because I'm going to ask you about them later on. Okay? So where does trauma come from? Okay? There are various experiences, right? All right? Emotional, physical, or sexual abuse, historical violence against a specific group, whether slavery or genocide, okay? Abandonment or neglect, especially for children, okay? Sexual assault, grief, domestic violence, experiencing or witness violent crime, accidents, institutional abuse, cultural dislocation or sudden loss, okay? Medical procedures. If you've been in a hospital and you've been under, you're actually still conscious. Okay? Terrorism, war, and combat, prolonged repeated racism and poverty, natural disasters. What else would be a traumatic event? What else?
Being a witness of all that stuff?
Yes. Just being a witness. Do you know that the traumatic event of 9/11 watched on TV to children was more traumatic than all the people who died in the Vietnam War. Yeah, that's a very traumatic. Didn't you feel something? If you felt something, you were traumatized. Yeah. Listen, if you felt something from seeing it, right, you were traumatized. Trauma is a normal response to extreme events. It's a normal response. Right? People can experience recovery from effects of trauma, though. So tell me something. On 9/11, you know all that stuff you felt? Right? Why didn't I feel anything?
Everybody deals with trauma
Differently.
in different ways.
Yeah, but there are people who see things like someone can come in here right now and shoot somebody. I'm not saying any one of you. Someone can come in here and shoot somebody. Your experience from that would be different from mine. Everyone would take it differently. You understand? I've seen that multiple times. So I'm not, all right. All right. And it doesn't hit me. It's the same thing with kids. Come in the Mosby Court with me one day. I got some kids, right, that they ain't scared of gunfire. They don't run when they hear it. They don't run when they hear it. But when we hear gunfire, down or running. Right? They don't do nothing. See, they hear it and they see it's different. It's different from everybody. Oh. Where does trauma come from? Here are the things we just talked about. Where trauma comes from. Okay? And everybody pretty much on the planet has experienced this. One of these things. Some. Everybody on the planet. Okay? But people who suffer from SMI, who have serious mental illness, right? People who have substance use disorders. We've sat down there, had that, and that's the effect. Us using drugs, us having mental disorders, our brain doesn't function properly anymore as a result of the trauma. That's right. The trigger. That's right. That's right. The coping mechanism for the trauma. Coping mechanism for trauma. Right? Remember that. It's the coping mechanism of trauma. Substance use disorder is a coping mechanism for trauma. All right? I used to think that the only reason why I got high is because my friends got high. That wasn't the reason. So anytime I hear somebody tell me, well, the only reason I get high is because my friends get high. No. It comes from something more. They just haven't looked at it, haven't experienced that, haven't, really, all right? The prevalence of trauma. 70% of all adults in the United States have had some kind of traumatic experience. 70%. Okay? 90% of people being served in the mental health system have exposed to trauma. 90%. Most people in mental health systems exposed to trauma have had multiple experiences of various types of traumatic experience. 97%, remember this, 97% of homeless women with mental health diagnosis have experienced physical and sexual trauma in childhood and adulthood. 97%. At least 75% of adolescents involved in the criminal justice system have trauma histories. 97%. All right. People who have challenges related to trauma often end up diagnosed as mentally ill. Okay? When these challenges are often rooted in traumatic life experience. They don't say that person has been involved in a traumatic life experience. They say you're mentally ill. My term is always struggle and suffering with their mental wellness. That's what I like. I like to use that language. Mental wellness. Not mental illness. Because they're not ill. They're really not. They went through something and it was a normal response. It's a normal response. Okay? Points upon her. Impacts of trauma. All forms of abuse, neglect, abandonment, and natural events can be traumatizing. But not every event causes trauma. Okay? The earlier in life the trauma occurs, the more severe the long-term consequences. Okay? Deliberate and intentional violence is particularly damaging, especially when it is diagnosed with the betrayal trauma of love and care. Domestic violence. Domestic violence. You know how many times I've been on Rikers Island shooting the kneecaps and the elbows and the feet of my sister's boyfriends because they hit on them? You know the worst thing I ever experienced, and I'm going to share this with you, is not to re-traumatize anybody, is my sister's boyfriend hit on her so bad she bled out. She called me on the phone, on a rotary phone. I was home at my mother's house. She called me and said, please come get him. Went over there. He was at the door. He answered the door. What you want? Pow, pow. Shot him twice in his kneecap. Didn't kill him. Didn't kill him. All right? She took the gun, when the cops came, said domestic violence. So she was protected, right? No one said I did it or anything, right? He goes to the hospital and goes to jail. He gets out of the hospital, goes to jail, gets sentenced 2 years, right? 2 years, who's waiting for him at the gate to take him home? That traumatized me. Not me doing what I did to him, but what she did to me. That traumatized me. So one of the ways I healed myself is when we reconciled, I had that talk with her because I never told her how that made me feel. And she got it. She got it because of the way I articulated it to her. Let her know